Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to Drums and Drams. My name is Cameron, and today we're going to be taking a look at a brand new release from the Heaven Hill Distillery. This is Elijah Craig Barrel Proof Batch B521. All right, so like I said, today we're taking a look at Elijah Craig Barrel Proof Batch B521. Now, before we get to the tasting, I want to give just a little bit of background information about this brand. Elijah Craig Barrel Proof is released 3 times per year in A, B, and C batches. We have B521 here, so this is the second release of the year. And 521 stands for May 2021. So we have batch B521. Now, earlier this year, batch A121 came out for both Larceny Barrel Proof and Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, both products from Heaven Hill. And for me, they both fell very, very flat. Now, the Larceny A121, pretty unanimously, at least with the people I've talked to, was a bad batch. I mean, it just was not doing it. Extremely low proof, and the flavors just didn't really work. And then you go over to the Elijah Craig Barrel Proof A121. I also didn't care for that one so much, although I think the consensus was more mixed on that one. A lot of people tend to really enjoy the A121. For me, it's come last place in all of my blind tastings between these different batches of Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. So again, pretty unimpressive for me with A121. Now, when we're looking at this release, the B521, what strikes me immediately is the proof of this batch. We have 118.2 proof. I want to make sure I got that right. Yeah, so 59.1% ABV. This is the lowest ABV release ever for Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. I believe the second lowest release was batch B519. Kind of strange that they're both B batches. But recent releases of Elijah Craig Barrel Proof have really been pretty high proof. And so to have this under 60% ABV is quite unusual, and it's a reason to hesitate. I totally understand that. First, I'm going to taste the B521, and then I'm going to do some comparisons at the end of this video. Very, very quick comparisons. So I will have 3 different head-to-heads at the end of the video. First, I'm going to put it next to the A121. Then I'll put it next to B519, which I mentioned is another low-proof batch. And then at the end, I'm going to put it next to B520 because everybody loved that batch. And I'm going to be curious to see how that final comparison does. And then I'll kind of give a ranking for what I think about those batches or whatever at the end of the video. Just a reminder here that Elijah Craig Barrel Proof is 12 years, it's age stated, it's non-chill filtered, so it's got all of the goodies. The MSRP is about 70 bucks. Still a great value in bourbon. I know all the whiskey tubers like to say, ECBP is the best value in bourbon. Well, it kind of is, as long as you like that flavor profile. So I think that's all I've got. Let's go ahead and get into this tasting now. We're going to start with Elijah Craig Batch B521. All right, so right away on the nose here, it's very flat. You know, usually with Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, I'm accustomed to like the ethanol crawling up your nose. You kind of get teary-eyed and everything like that when you start smelling on it. This is not that way. It's a little bit more reserved on the nose, as you would expect from a sub 60% ABV. The biggest thing that's striking me on the nose right now is not a whole lot of like deep, rich caramels or butterscotch that I'm used to from Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. I'm getting a lot of dry woodiness here. It's kind of strange. Yeah, it's got a really dark flavor profile overall on the nose here. Not a lot of fruit that I can pick up at all. You could convince me that there's some dark cherry, which is a typical note of Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. You could convince me of that, but it's not jumping out of the glass. I'm getting a ton of dry wood that reminds me of almost like a Booker's or one of those Old Forester barrel strengths, that really, really dry, I don't know, woodiness going on. There's a lot of barrel char in this particular batch. Yeah, of course, you're getting the Heaven Hill peanut note on here. Although it's not super strong, it's more of like a peanut butter. It's a little more rounded out and dark, not quite as sharp and brittle as some of the other batches. And still has a little bit of sweetness on here, a little bit of like that cane sugar type note. But again, nothing really syrupy or viscous, or I don't know. It's not a typical Elijah Craig Barrel Proof that I'm used to. So let's check this out on the palate and see what we get. Cheers. Yeah, very interesting here. With Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, typically it hits your palate. You have a brief second of like, oh, that's pretty good. And then it rips your face off. It's like a roller coaster, you know. It really, really hits you hard. This batch at this low proof, it's like a slow build, but then you feel like it's going to maybe continue going somewhere and it just plateaus out. It's like it wants to keep going, but it just kind of dies off there in the mid palate getting into the finish. Now, the biggest takeaway here for me is just that this is an extremely oaky, extremely woody version of Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. Very burnt, very char forward. Again, it's a combination of like this really dry woodiness that I liken to that Booker's or that Old Forester barrel strength. But also on the palate here, as you get into the finish, you do start to get a lot of really funky oak. The oak profile, I like it quite a bit. It's tannic. It's kind of sour. It reminds you a little bit of that older Wild Turkey funk, if you've ever had maybe the 17-year bottled and bond from the Master's Keep collection or anything like that. You get a lot of those like wood qualities, but you're not getting, again, a lot of the sweet candy qualities. You're not getting a lot of like fruitiness or anything like that. So let's do another sip here and see how this continues to develop. All right, so maybe on that sip, I'm getting a little bit of dark fruitiness coming through. Maybe a hint of like a plum type note. Not distinctly cherry like I'm used to with a lot of the Elijah Craig Barrel Proofs. The finish is, yeah, it's an acceptable length. It's a predictable length. There's no complaints about it at this proof. Although, again, for those of you who are accustomed to Elijah Craig Barrel Proof around like 63 to 67% ABV, the entire experience of drinking this batch is not going to compare to that. What I would say here before we get to the side-by-side comparisons with these other batches is that B521 for me should not exist under the Elijah Craig Barrel Proof brand. I feel like if Elijah Craig released, let's just say, Elijah Craig 118, right? Like something that has a proof statement on the label, but is not barrel proof necessarily, this would be that product. Like I would drink this under that label and be happy about it. It would be a higher proof version, but not a barrel proof version, not something that's going to rip my face off. And if it was like $50, this would be solid. But the fact that this is under the label of Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, competing against insane batches like C920, B520, for me C919, all of those other batches in the mix, this just seems a little bit silly to me. It doesn't match up with that. So, you know, for what it's worth, I think it's kind of a strange thing for Elijah Craig to do, to release this. I'm not upset about a low proof offering. I should just say that now. It doesn't upset me that they're trying different things, but if you're going to do it, it needs to be done very well, especially with the way that these, you know, Elijah Craig Barrel Proof batches in 2020, they were all incredible. And you get to this and it's kind of like, what are we doing here, guys? So that's all I've got for this sort of opening tasting. Of course, you can turn the video off now, but I'm going to do some side-by-sides now and see whether I'm crazy about, you know, for saying all this, or, you know, whether I'm going to be confirming what I've said here with my individual tasting of B521. So we're going to now move on to batch A121 and put it next to this B521. All right, so we've got A121 here. I'll have B521 over here. Let's do a quick little side-by-side nosing, starting with A. Yeah, A is definitely a brighter nose overall, a little bit more ethanol here, which you would expect. Although this is also a low-proof batch at 61.8% ABV. You get a lot of nuttiness on A121, a little bit of green apple, actually. And then, yeah, some more traditional Elijah Craig Barrel Proof caramels and things like that. Not nearly as dark of a profile. Let's put it next to B521. Yeah, I mean, B521, actually, the darkness of this, I really enjoy it for that. You're getting a lot of that wood. Again, lots of that barrel char, that toastiness going on. All right, let's taste A121. Yeah, A121, like I said, brighter. It's sharp, a little bit thin, actually, on the palate here. Even though it is a higher proof, it's really feeling a little bit thin. And that's why I didn't care for it so much when I gave this one a review a few months ago. And getting into the finish here, you get that standard Heaven Hill oak funk that I really like. Yeah, all right, let's do 521 now. I think here with B521, the flavor profile is a little bit more one-dimensional, but darker. And so if you like a darker flavor profile in your bourbon with a lot of wood influence, then you might like that B521 over the A121. In fact, I think with all of its flaws, I actually like B521 better than A121. Now, as we get into the finish, yeah, you get a lot of that oak funk going on here. The finish is hanging on a little bit longer than A121, even with the lower proof. Yeah, I like it. So let's go ahead now and compare B521 to B519, which is the second lowest proof batch of the Elijah Craig Barrel Proof line. All right, so let's do our second comparison now. This is batch B519, the second lowest proof batch. This is coming in at 61.1% ABV. Okay, so B519 for me has never been like a favorite by any means, but now that I'm smelling it, I'm getting a ton of that sort of butterscotch, almost dusty quality that you get from older bourbons, old National Distillers bottles, or even like the old pirate bottles of Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. Yeah, it's got that dustiness here. It's got a lot of nice cherry notes, a pretty wide range from light flavors to dark flavors. And the proof seems like it, you know, even though it's a low proof and I know that, on the nose, it's sitting just right for me. It's very approachable. It seems like it's going to be drinkable. So let's try it on the palate. Oh, again, that was never a favorite batch of mine, but maybe it's just doing this comparison, these particular ones side by side. That B519 is great. The slight dusty funk in there, that butterscotch note, the fruitiness. There's also a little bit of brightness going on in here. Like I said, it's not too nutty. Some of the batches get a little bit overly peanut forward for me, and then it just kind of throws it out of balance. This is a very balanced, very drinkable batch. Now, let's go back to B521 and see how this compares. Just a lot of wood. Same thing that I've been saying. A lot of wood on the nose. Again, it is a little bit of a darker overall profile, but it's like wood and pepper now. I'm getting a little bit of pepper as I do this comparison. One more time on the palate here with B521. It doesn't feel like I'm drinking bourbon from the same line. As it stands so far, I would say B519 is the best. And then, you know, A121 versus B521, that might come down to a mood thing. A121's pretty bright, a little more alcohol forward, a little more intense. B521 is sort of a one-trick pony, dark profile, very woody, like I've said. That might be a tie right now. I'm not entirely sure. So let's do one last comparison now. B521 up against B520, which was an absolutely stellar batch from last year. All right, so like I said, final comparison here. We're going to be taking a look at batch B520 from last year, putting it next to the brand new B521. It's a little bit of an unfair comparison because most people loved B520, and also the proof here is about 4.5% higher in terms of ABV. It's 63.6% as compared to the 59.1% of B521. So let's take a look at B520 first here and see how this thing stacks up. Okay, so it's obvious now on the nose why people like this. It's got a very layered profile. You're getting everything from very dark flavors to very bright flavors with enough alcohol to really deliver the aroma to your nose pretty much perfectly. I mean, it's extremely balanced here. All of those sort of classic bourbon notes are present in the B520, the really rich caramels, maybe a little bit of that butterscotch going on in here, some chocolate. There's enough peanut or peanut butter almost in here to kind of balance it out, add a little bit of interest, but the nuttiness doesn't take it over. I could see people that say there might be a little bit of maple syrup in here, good amount of vanilla, there are dark fruits. I mean, there's everything. A nice oak profile, quintessential bourbon right here. So let's try it on the palate, B520. It drinks under its proof. It has amazing development throughout the entire sip. And as we transition into the finish, the oakiness really comes in at the right time. It takes you sort of away from the sip. The finish is a great length here. Just everything about it is so balanced, so drinkable, and I can completely understand why people love B520. Now let's put that next to B521 and see how it stacks up. So just smelling the glass here with B521, I'm not even really smelling anything. I mean, I know there's bourbon in the glass, but like after tasting the 520, this just seems flat and extremely uninviting. It's not exciting. I don't know. I think I'm going to stand by what I said at the beginning of the video. This does not belong under the Elijah Craig barrel proof label. Nowhere close. This should be a high proof, 12-year age stated Elijah Craig that exists somewhere else. This should not have made it into the Elijah Craig barrel proof portfolio. I know earlier I said it could be a tie between this and A121 depending on the mood. I think I'm going to retract that. I think this is not even exciting enough to be in the same conversation as A121 at this point. And honestly, the biggest issue for me, while the flavor profile is not great, it's not varied enough. Some people might enjoy it. It's less about the flavor profile and it's more about the actual construction and drinking experience of this bourbon. It's just not constructed well. The development, like from front to mid, back palate into the finish, it doesn't go anywhere. It just sits flat. And I don't know, it's kind of a shame because Heaven Hill recently has been tanking on these releases, as far as I'm concerned. The Larceny stuff has been just a train wreck for me, and A121 was bad, but like not this bad. I don't know what's going on, and I don't think you can blame it all on the proof. I mean, you could blend a good lower proof version of Elijah Craig barrel proof. I think I would expect that you could do that with the stocks that they have, and for some reason, this is what we get. The MSRP is increasing. Like in Ohio, we've now moved from $60 in a control state to $70, and the quality is suffering. So I hope we're not going to see another case of Booker's here. I hope we haven't seen the best batches of Elijah Craig barrel proof yet. But if we have, it's a shame. You know, I still am going to take C920, B520, A120, C919. I'm going to take any of the last 4 batches before 2021 over this 2021 stuff any day. So I know it's been a little bit of a negative review. That's all I've got for this video. Of the batches I tasted today, what did I taste? B519. That one's got that little dusty funk that I love, although it might not be as good as B520. It's just kind of up to, what your preference is there. And then the 2021 stuff just falls off. So anyways, thank you guys for checking this video out. I know it's another negative review for Heaven Hill's limited release stuff, but it is what it is. And I'm going to be curious to see what my friends in the Whiskey Tube community and other people have to say about this one. So if you haven't already, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell notification button and turn on all notifications to find out when I'm dropping new content and when I'm going live, which is at least once a week at this point. And if you like what you're seeing from Drums and Drams and you want to support the channel and get some access to some exclusive content, check out the Patreon in the description of this video. You can choose a tier that's right for you. And, we've got patron-only live streams, giveaways, and all sorts of stuff like that. And if you've tried the B521 from Elijah Craig barrel proof, let me know what you think about it. I am totally open to being wrong about this. I'm going to be curious to see what everybody else has to say about it. But for me right now, it is not doing it. I know a lot of people are going to tell me that I need to give it 2 or 3 weeks to open up, or you're not being fair, or this or that. That's fine. Please just hit me up in the comments. I would love to discuss this, and I'm going to be, curious to see how this thing develops over the next few weeks. But right now, sadly, it is probably my least favorite Elijah Craig barrel proof that I've ever tried. So thank you all so much. We're going to wrap this video up now. I'm going to have my final sip of the B519 because I love that dusty funk. So cheers, and I'll see you next time here on Drums and Drams.